Hello everyone, welcome back to Chronicle IS Academy. My name is Saloni Nankyolier and today I want to discuss a very critical and important topic with you. It's a sensitive topic which is violence against women in politics. This is a topic that's important for GS paper 1 of society, paper 2 of governance and paper 4 of ethics. It's also important for your case studies, for your essay paper and also for your interview. So tomorrow the panel could ask that you're a district collector and you're overseeing elections and there are some women candidates who come up to you and they complain about receiving threats and harassment from anonymous sources. How are you going to handle these situations? So yeah, this is an important topic and let's just get started. I want you to take a moment and read the headlines that you see on screen. That women are facing violence and sexist harassment against female MPs. And why are we normalizing hate speech against women in politics? Why do you think we keep saying such headlines, we keep seeing such things in the news? There can be multiple reasons for that, which are, number one is your patriarchal mindset. Unfortunately, even today, we have a huge patriarchal mindset that's dominant in the country, and people do not really want to be led by women. That's a harsh truth. So this is your first problem. That's a patriarchal mindset. Even when women in India, they make up almost 48% or 50% of the population, even in that scenario, people do not want to be led by women. This is one issue. The second issue is your harassment and threats. There are constant online trolling and offline violence that the women candidates and the women MPs, they face. People in politics, the women in politics, they face these challenges. And often when they complain about these threats and complain about these harassment issues, people, just say that they're attention seeking and they're not very serious about their work. They're just wanting to gain some publicity. This again is a harsh and unfortunate reality that the women today have to face. There are also economic constraints. So campaigning in elections, it's a hefty affair. And oftentimes women are not able to arrange for the funds or they do not have that amount of money that they can campaign in the full capacity. So at times, these are also challenges that the women in politics, they face. There is intimidation that they face. There is a lot of hate that they have to receive. And there are also some structural biases. So many times the political parties, they refrain from giving tickets to women candidates because women, they take care of the family. They also bear children. There is a time where their career will have to take a back seat and they might not be able to focus or give a lot into the work that they're doing. So because of these things, these things are actually played against women, and then these political parties, they refrain from giving tickets to the women candidates. Again, something that's not desirable but is prevalent. Okay. Now, what are some policies and legal framework that we have in place? They are not robust, but what do we have in place? Number one is the Women Reservation Bill. So the 108th Constitution Amendment talks about the Women Reservation Bill, where we have to reserve 33% of the seats for women in Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies. So this is a reservation that the Constitution now provides the women candidates, and this reservation is also is given on top of the category reservation that's already there. So for example, if there are 30 people who have to be selected from the SC category, out of these 30, 1/3, that is 10 women, people will have to be women. So 10 candidates will have to be women. Same goes for ST. So if there are 15 people who have to be selected from this category, 5 have to be women. So this is a reservation that we have right now. It's a progressive step. It was something that's needed. So this 108th amendment, it guaranteed this reservation. Now, the second is the Representation of People Act 1951. We have this, which talks about the electoral reforms, the electoral conduct, the code of conduct that these candidates should follow. But it talks nothing about the gender-specific reforms. So there's nothing in particular about women candidates. What are the legal protections that should be given to them? What are some challenges of harassment and threats that they face, and how are we dealing with all that? All this is not covered in the RPA, and this is a drawback of this act. Then we also have the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act, or the POSH. guidelines that came in after the Vishakha regulation, the Vishakha guidelines that came in after the Supreme Court ruling, where sexual harassment against women, it has to be protected in the workplace. So it talks about sexual harassment against women in workplace, but political parties is ambiguous. Though political parties, they are also a workplace, women work there, but there is an ambiguity, and not all political parties, they follow these guidelines. So there are still sexual harassment cases that are happening, and they are not being dealt properly in these political parties. Now, let's look at the current scenario, the current women political representation in India. I want to reiterate that women in India, they are close to 50% of the population. And now let's look at what is the composition that we have in the Lok Sabha. So the 17th Lok Sabha, it has 78 women MPs, which is close to 14.4, like close to 15% of representation. So you see, 50% of the population has only 15% of the representation on the top level constitution making body, policy making body. So in Lok Sabha, there is only 15% representation, which is very less than what you see in the world, especially in the Nordic countries. So the Nordic countries, they have on an average 40% of representation from women. And it is needless to say that these countries, they top in the Human Development Index. They have empathetic leadership. There are many developmental policies, many societal policies that are there. And they come in one of the happiest countries in the world, and one of the most developed nations in the world. So something to learn from these countries. So this is an unfortunate scenario that we see here. And there are only 2 women who hold cabinet positions. So there are 30 cabinet positions that we have right now, and only 2 are held by women. So 2 on 30, it's like 0.06% of representation in the top level policy making in the cabinet body. You have only 2 women. Again, now this is not an ideal situation in a democracy. This is not how it should, like a democracy and the policy making bodies, constitution should look like. But this is the harsh reality that we have today. Now, what is the way forward? The way forward is that we have stronger electoral laws. Right now, there are no strict legal protection laws or anything in place where the women candidates or the women politicians, they can feel safe. They can raise their voices against the harassments, against the online, offline trolling that they face. So we need to have proper legal frameworks in place. We need to have political party reforms. Right now, we do not have mandatory quota for women. So political parties, as I mentioned, even due to structural barriers, they at times hesitate to give tickets to to women candidates. To curb such situations, it is ideal to have some quota for women, a mandatory quota for women in political parties. So it's not there right now. There needs to be a lot of awareness and training. We need to have sensitization programs. So we need to do this at the grassroots level and also at the top leadership level. So at the grassroots level also, people need to understand that there is no shame in being led by women. Women can take leadership positions, they can manage the leadership positions well, and they can do well for the country. And even at the top leadership level, we need to have such policies in place, such frameworks in place, where we are able to, take more women into the constituencies, give more tickets to women, so that we can have more gender sensitive policies. We can have better societal policies, better developmental policies. So we need to do all these things as the way forward. Now, I also want to talk about what the benefits of ending this violence and having more women in politics would lead to. First of all, it will lead to a stronger democracy, because right now when 50% of the population is having only 15% of representation, this is not an example of a strong democracy. We need this representation to go up, and this in turn will lead to stronger democracy, because women will also feel included. We'll have better gender inclusive laws, better practices in place. Yeah, so we'll have gender inclusive governance. We covered this. This will also lead to an economic growth. And I also want to cite some examples of global leadership where women, they held top positions and those countries did very well. So for example, Jacinda Ardern, she was a former Prime Minister of New Zealand, and at the time of COVID, she had a very empathetic leadership. She prioritized crisis management, and New Zealand was like one of the top countries, one of the best countries who was handling the COVID situation very well. So this is one example. Then Angela Merkel of Germany, she also she also had some amazing developments in her during her journey. So there are examples of women who have led these developmental policies. They've held high positions in the country. And if these Nordic women can, or the women across the world can, I see no reason why Indian women cannot. So it's just in the mindset. We need to do away with the biases. We need to be more empathetic towards the women in India, towards the women in politics, so that they can, they can be a part of the policy making body. They can create better gender inclusive laws. So the corruption rates, the corruption against women, the violence against women will also go down. Women will feel more included, happier, and in turn the nation will also become one of the most happiest and one of the best developed nations in the world. Thank you.